Welcome to the Keep Dreaming podcast, the show where adversity meets purpose and purpose gives birth to your destiny, but more importantly, your dreams. I'm your host, Charleston Girley, so grab your coffee and let's dive in. Top of the morning, I want to welcome each and every one of you to episode 6 of the Keep Dreaming podcast. And so I'm excited for you all on today. I'm glad that you all have chose to join me for another week, pouring into your dreams, receiving wisdom, receiving experience. And so that's what this podcast is all about. And so I'm very thankful you all continue to share, like, subscribe, and let's continue to build this community and making our dreams a reality. And so we're going to jump into our coffee segment of the day. And today's coffee is your fuel for boldness. I'm drinking on a bold dark roast. It's my go-to if you can't tell at this point, but I want you to grab your favorite roast or brew, your water, your tea, because we're talking about being able to take a leap. And in order to take a leap of faith, you got to be bold. You got to have that bold spirit within you. And so that's what our coffee segment is like on today. And so just like coffee gives you that energy to start this morning, this conversation is going to give you the courage to start and take the risk that your dreams need. So if you got your mug, if you got your water, tea, whatever it is that you got, let's do a cheers. And let's get into today's episode. So, welcome back to the Keep Dreaming podcast. I'm your host, Charleston Girley, and today's episode is called No Risk, No Reward. Why playing it safe is actually your biggest risk. And so I want to start today by just kind of sharing some of the risks that I've taken to make my dreams come true. When I was writing my book, I had to be vulnerable. That was very risky. I was talking about things that maybe at one point in my life I didn't really want anybody to know. When I was getting into real estate, I had to take some risks. There was money that I didn't really have. I emptied out my bank account, emptied out my savings. That was a risk that I had to take. And so when I was thinking about all the different dreams, but actually the risks that I had to take, none of the moves were comfortable. But each one of them, they ended up shaping me, and they actually brought me closer to the life that I'm building today. But one of the greatest risks that I had to take, which to this day is still very difficult, was leaving from home. That was the greatest risk that I ever had to take. And the reason being is because at that point, I was so young. I was maybe 17 at the time, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where God was leading me, but there was a belief within myself. There was faith within myself. There was a willingness to win within myself that I owed it to myself. I owed it to my past self, my future self, my present self to take that leap of faith. You see, it wasn't just leaving home. I have a twin brother. And up until that moment, we spent every day together, every single day. And so the thought of leaving home 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away, but not being able to frequently go back home, that was a great risk. Leaving my parents, leaving my younger brother, leaving my aunts, my family, we were very close knit. And so being able to leave them, that was risky. That was risky for me in a personal way. It was not something that I necessarily chose to do. I knew that I wanted this dream. I knew I wanted to be successful, and I knew the current environment that I was in was not going to supply what I was looking for. And so here I am between a rock and a hard place, asking myself, nobody knew about this conversation. Nobody knew what I was contemplating. And to be honest, I actually wanted to go to the university in my hometown because I didn't necessarily want to leave. But when they offered me the option to walk on, I denied because I knew that I could go walk on somewhere else that had provided more opportunities, greater opportunities. But nevertheless, I was still between a rock and a hard place of choosing between my dream and choosing between my current reality. And so in the midst of that, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to stay comfortable? Or am I willing to get a little uncomfortable to go after something great? Even thinking about moving to a new city, being an African American male, Pine Bluff is 80 to 90% predominantly African American. And so at that time, 2011, Jonesboro, which is where I was going, which is where I was taking the risk, was predominantly 80, 95% Caucasian. And so now I'm facing a different dynamic of color of the skin. I don't know this world. I don't know anybody. I don't have any resources. I don't have any contacts or anything like that. And so I'm sitting there and I'm talking to God, but I'm telling God, I'm saying, hey, I know what this dream is that I want. I see it. I feel it. And God, I'm willing to take this risk. I don't know what's going to be on the other side. I don't know how all of this is going to play out. I don't have no money. My family doesn't have any money. I got to go there and I got to earn a scholarship. That's what I got to do in order to pay for school. I got to do all these different things. But at the end of the day, I had to make a decision. And when you're chasing your dreams, when you're trying to make your dreams a reality, when you're trying to bring this vision into fruition, you have got to make a decision. Jesus said, let your yes be a yes, let your no be a no. And so it was in that moment. I remember sitting up in my bedroom, 17 years old, getting ready to turn 18, and I decided, God, I want better. And it was in that moment that I decided, as LeBron James said, I'm taking my talents to Jonesboro, not knowing anybody, not knowing what it's going to look like, not knowing how it's going to happen, but I had to take the risk. And I'm so grateful that I took the risk because the risk provided the reward. Had I not taken that risk, I would have never received the rewards. I would have never brought more dreams, more visions into reality to be the successful man that you see, to be the successful man that you hear on today. But the risk is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Where I was not where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be where my feet were in that moment. I wanted to take a risk to go and provide something different, to go be somewhere else, to go become a better version of myself, to push myself. Playing it safe, it might feel secure, but often it keeps you stuck. I couldn't be a product of my environment. So many times we are placed in an environment and we think that we can't become something better. We can't become something greater. I was not a product of my environment. But every dream that God gives you, it will require faith. And faith, it always, 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 always comes with a risk. There's a scripture that I want to give you, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. And it says, and without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists. When I was sitting in my room, when I was talking to God about the risk, that was me telling God, hey, I got faith, but I had to believe that he even existed. Because when you believe that he exists, finishing out that scripture, it says that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. When you're getting ready to take that risk, you got to seek him. Because there's a difference between ill-advised decisions and God-led risks. Hear me again. There's a difference between ill-advised decisions and God-led risks. In that moment, there was a God-led risk. I was talking to God about it. I was telling him the pros, the cons, weighing the different options. And through prayer, through fasting, he provided me discernment, even at an early age. And he guided me on what was okay to do. Now, had I gone back and I just took the first decision that came just out of a whim, I can't say that it would have been a reward. So when you are facing a decision, when you're looking to make that risk, make sure that it's not an ill-advised risk, but that it is a God-led risk. And so not all risks are equal. The risk that I'm talking to you about at 17 years old, that risk is going to be different than somebody who has a wife, has children. So you got to be able to analyze the weight of the risk. You got to be able to recognize the reality of it, what comes with this risk that I'm about to take. Some are calculated steps of faith, while again, others are reckless decisions. And so here are the steps to take before ever making a big move. Before you get ready to jump off the porch, there are 3 things that I need you to do. The first, I need you to pray and pause. Too many times we get an idea and we run with it. Never taking the time to pray about it and pause. You got to seek clarity from God before acting. The second is that you need to seek godly counsel. You don't need to just seek counsel. I need you to seek godly counsel. I need you to talk to trusted mentors, peers who can see what you can't. There's always other lenses to look at, always different perspectives. Now, I'm not saying that you got to just listen to them and follow what they say, but I need you to absorb it. So then you can go back to God and say, God, hey, this is what I heard. This is what I'm contemplating. Help me make sense of all of this. And then the third, you got to count the cost. Every decision, every risk that you are getting ready to make is going to come with a cost. The cost in the moment that I made the decision, that I took the risk to leave Pine Bluff, the cost was leaving my family behind. The cost was relinquishing memories that I could have gained with my brother, could have gained with my family. That was the cost that I took in that moment. So you got to ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario if I take this risk, if I make this decision, if I take out this loan, if I buy this building, if whatever it is that I'm doing to try to make this dream come true, what's the worst case scenario? And then I got to ask myself, can I recover from it? So many people out here are chasing dreams and then they take one risk and they're never able to recover. You got to be able to recover. I'm not saying that we're going to play it safe. I'm not saying that we're going to do everything by the book. There are going to be risks that you have to take, but you have to weigh the cost and you got to ask yourself, can you recover? Can you get back up again? If you get hit in the mouth, can you get back up? If you get punched, if you get blindsided, can you get back up? If you can get back up, that's a risk worth taking. But if you can't get back up. And if it's going to knock you out the race, knock you out the fight, then we're going to stay away from it. So think about your personal risk tolerance. Are you someone who avoids all risk and stays stuck? Or are you someone that's willing to jump? At some point in this life, you got to jump. You're watching these people on TV, their dreams that came into reality. You're going to the NBA game, their dreams came into reality. You're going into this clothing store, their dreams came into reality. At what point are you going to make your dreams into a reality? At what point are you going to get up off the couch, get up out of the bed, get up off the floor and take that risk? You know it's there. You've been feeling it all this time. Yet you are unlikely to take that risk. And so this episode is for you. I'm talking to you. Now, when we're thinking about this risk, we got to prepare for it. We can't just make it. We got to prepare. And the way that we prepare is that we prepare in advance. We got to do our research. I had to look up the school. I had to look up the dynamics. I had to look up when were tryouts, how to earn a scholarship. I had to prepare. I had to do my research. So you got to gather as much information as you can about the opportunity. Number two, you got to build a cushion. If you're getting ready to make a financial decision, you got to be able to save money. You got to have something in your savings account. You got to have some type of metric to help you should everything go left. Number three, you got to strengthen your mindset. You can't go into a decision. You can't take a risk with a weak mindset. A weak mindset, you're not going to last. You got to strengthen. You got to read, pray, journal, and you got to surround yourself with people that believe in you. And then number four, I know a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but you have to create a backup plan. Now, we're not saying that we aren't believing in the initial plan, but you got to have a backup plan. That's where wisdom comes into place. And so you got to know what you'll do with your first approach if it doesn't work out, and preparation gives you the confidence to be able to act boldly. So with the risk that I'm wanting you to take, the risk that I'm wanting you to contemplate, the risk that I'm wanting you to consider, there are 4 principles that you need to be mindful of when you're getting ready to take these risks. The first is the principle of faith. You got to step out and believe that God will meet you halfway. When I made that decision to go to school, 2.5 hours away, leaving my family behind, I knew God was somewhere. I couldn't tell where he was going to be at, how he was going to make it happen, but I knew he was somewhere in the mix. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 says, "For we live by faith, not by sight." You may not always see it. Even if you feel like God is leading you to take this risk, you may not see what's on the other side, so you got to have faith. The second is going to be the principle of obedience. Sometimes the risk is simply doing what God told you to do, and you don't know what's going to happen, and it may scare you, but it's through your obedience where God will show you the reward based on the risk that you take. Number 3 is going to be the principle of wisdom. Risk should be paired with wisdom. We got to plan, prepare, and then we got to move. We got to have wisdom. We got to be wise about the decision or the risk that we're getting ready to take. And then number 4 is the principle of perseverance. Even when the risk leads to temporary setbacks, you got to keep going. Not every risk is going to lead to a reward immediately. It may be a pause. It may even be a step back, but it does not mean that you are going in the wrong direction. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." You can't give up on this journey. Even though the risk that you took may not result in a reward right in this moment, you got to keep believing and you got to keep going. But the risk, you got to be proud if you take it, because that's showing you, that's showing God that you were willing to get up out of yourself. You're willing to get up off the couch, get out of the bed, get out of your comfort zone to see what's on the other side of the horizon. Where you grew up is not where you're supposed to stay. Your environment that you are dwelling in right now, that's not your permanent residence. But if you never take the risk, if you never get outside of yourself, you'll just be stuck watching everybody else's dreams come true. You'll be stuck reading about everybody else's dreams in the newspaper when that could have been you. But it wasn't you because you weren't willing to take the risk. And so this episode is for you to get some type of motivation, get some confidence on what it means to take the risk. I'm so glad that I took that risk. I do miss the moments that I missed out on. That was the cost that I had to accept. You got to accept the cost. You got to give up something. You got to give up the good to go for the great. And so I think about the memories that I missed out on with my family, missed out on with my brother. But I'm so glad that I took that risk because the life that I'm building now is greater than what I would have did if I would have stayed comfortable, if I would have stayed back in my hometown and never tried to pull myself out of my environment to go see something greater, to go see something better. And so you got to be willing to take that risk. Your homework assignment for this week, you got to pull out your journal. And I want you to take the time this week to write out a risk prep plan. And so for the next big decision that you're about to make in this journey, I want you to write it down. Now I want you to define the risk that you're considering. When you figure it out, I want you to write down the worst case scenario, how you're going to handle it. And then I want you to list 3 ways that you can prepare in advance, either financially, emotionally, or spiritually. And then we got to set a date. We got to set a date when we're going to take action. This is not something that we're going to continue to let linger. The enemy wants you to let it linger. We're going to set a date and we're going to move. And the date that you set, I want you to send it to somebody. I want you to send it to a friend, loved one. You can even DM it to me, but somebody that's going to hold you accountable because we have got to move and we have got to take action. And so if this episode encouraged you, I want you to go share with a friend who needs to push to take a leap today. Tag me on Instagram, tag me on Facebook. Tell me your risk that you're willing to take, that you're about to take. And I want to celebrate you and may even share your story on the next episode. And so thanks for tuning in for episode 6 of the Keep Dreaming podcast. Remember, no risk, no reward. And so playing it safe, it might seem comfortable, but it will never get you to your calling. And I really want you to experience the dream that God has given you. We got one life, and we got to make it happen. We got to keep believing, but more importantly, we got to keep dreaming.